People First broadcast is a show presented by people learning disabilities for our friends and community. We talk about issues that are important to us and interview interesting people, find out new information. This is our way to make a difference. Have our voices heard.
Hello and welcome to the People First podcast. This week we have a very special episode as we are speaking to Robbie Moore MP. In this show we will spend some time asking Robbie about local Keighley issues, and then we will have a second part where we will ask Robbie about the changes to the disability minister role. Welcome, Robbie. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Really looking forward to answering all of your questions. So thank you so much for inviting me along. Very, very good to be here.
Can you explain your job as your MP? How you attend Keighley?
Yeah, Alex, really, really good question. So I am your Member of Parliament. And what does that mean? So that means that I represent all of you and everybody that lives in Keighley, in Ilkley, Silsden and the Worth Valley and our wider area. So about 78,000 people that live within what's called the constituency of Keighley and Ilkley. And I represent all of you and take your challenges, your opinions, what you would like me to do to make our area better. And I take all of that down to Westminster, to the Houses of Parliament, where I will have conversations with the government and with the Prime Minister to try and get the very best that we can achieve for Keighley and Ilkley to make it an even better place to live, to work and to enjoy.
How long do you think it will take for either episode to be rebuilt?
Really good question. So, we have been successful in achieving funding to build a new Airedale hospital. And the reason that this is so important is because it is built from what's called aerated concrete, which means that unfortunately, the hospital in certain parts is crumbling and we need to therefore build a new hospital. And we have secured the money to do that. And the government has committed that we will get a new Airedale hospital by 2030. So that's not that long away when we think about it, because we're in 2024 at the moment. So, to build a new hospital, which is going to be servicing all of our area, and have it open and complete by 2030 is not that long away. So I'm really looking forward to now making sure that we get that money spent that we've secured from our Conservative government as quickly as possible.
Why the shops in Keighley closing? What could be done about it?
Alex, like you, I don't want to see any of our shops closing. In fact, we want to see as many shops staying open, or if not more shops coming into Keighley, because when I walk around Keighley, we have some really good small independent businesses that are going above and beyond and providing really good services or really good products that we can all buy. But there is a challenge that we have with certain shops closing, and we see that, and that I think is partly down to people's behaviour in how they shop, because more people are shopping online, which creates a challenge for those businesses that are operating physically within Keighley. But we are trying to make sure that we make it as an attractive a place as possible for new businesses to open and for businesses to stay. So the government has ring-fenced money to Keighley to try and help with some of these issues, and we allocated £33.6 million to Keighley through what's called the Towns Fund to try and help with improving the centre of Keighley and making it more of an attractive place to come, and also to make it easier to get here. Because we need to make sure that it's easy and cheap for people to get into Keighley as well. So not only are we investing that money into the centre of town, but we've reduced how much it costs people to get around Keighley as well. So we have introduced money that has been subsidising how much it is to ride on the bus. So you can get around Keighley for £1 or travel into Keighley from outside of the area for £2.50 on a single fare. So we're trying to make it as easier for people to get around as possible, but also make the town as attractive as possible for businesses that want to stay or come and open.
Do you have any plan to pedestrianising Keighley like Bradford and Keighley? Why would this be beneficial?
So Graham, that's a good question about asking how we can pedestrianise Keighley, if that's what we want to do. And I think we need to make Keighley easier to get around for pedestrians, for those with prams, those with pushchairs, or those with disability challenges. And actually, I think what would be better is to focus our effort on making sure that the pavements that exist, that we have in place at the moment, are as smooth and as well maintained as possible, and that we have our dropped curbs, so that if you have got your pushchair or if you're in a wheelchair, it's as easy as possible to get from one pavement to another through having dropped curbs in as better places as possible. And who does that responsibility sit with? So that sits with the Highways Department at Bradford Council, because they're responsible for maintaining our pavements and responsible for maintaining our dropped curbs. And it's one of the roles that I can have is trying to influence and make sure that Bradford Council prioritise maintaining our pavements as best as they can. And making sure that the dropped curbs are in as best and the most appropriate locations to make it as easy as possible for people to get around.
Why are Bradford Council cutting their services?
Well, that's a really apt question at the moment and really topical at the moment, Jane. And I have to say that none of us want to see any of our services being cut or reduced. And as we speak, Bradford Council are proposing to close our household waste and recycling centres up in Sugden End in the Worth Valley, but also in Ilkley. And we've seen them try to do that previously with the Keighley Household Waste and Recycling Centre, and we were successful in getting them to do a U-turn on that and keep it open. But I think one of the reasons as to why they're cutting their services is actually due to a lot of, in my view, mismanagement of how they have been spending public money in the past. For example, spending money on big, huge projects in the centre of Bradford and, in my view, wasting some of that money that should be spent on them providing statutory services, i.e. specifically spending that money on our highways or making sure that they're reinvesting that money in our area on regeneration projects or ensuring that our basic level of children's services or healthcare provisions that they contribute towards are focused and prioritised on. And I think it's been incredibly frustrating for a significant number of years that there has been a poor level of management at Bradford Council spending taxpayers' money on the wrong things, and that has unfortunately led them to be into a significant financial challenges that they're experiencing at the moment.
To start part 2, we are going to read a statement by our friend and previous podcast guest, Celia Hensman. We would be interested to hear your response to her words, Robbie. Nearly 1 in 4 people in the UK are disabled, a quarter of our population. Globally, disabled people make up 15%. To have no disability minister is to undermine the representation deserved within government for disabled people. At less than 2% presence in the Commons, the disability minister helps provide the vital representation needed. Ministers speak on behalf of the government from the front benches during parliamentary debates and must answer questions put to them by other MPs or members of the House of Lords. The disability minister is supposed to deliver policy across government, head the disability unit, plan and strategise for the future working with the disabled community and support rights devolution. The absence of a dedicated disability minister is a glaring omission, leaving us without an essential advocate within government. The role is not just symbolic, it has practical implications for policy making and ensuring that our needs are considered in all aspects of governance. Disability rights have to remain at the forefront of policy decisions, and that those with disabilities have their voices properly heard within government circles. Disability cannot be an afterthought or shoehorned into other areas and drowned out of conversation.
Yeah, fine, Tom. So I think the first thing to say is we do have a disability minister. So that is Mims Davies, who I meet with regularly. And in addition to having a disability minister, who is Mims Davies, every government department has a disability champion as a minister. And I am a minister, and I sit in the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, so the abbreviation being DEFRA as a department. And I, as the minister, as one of the ministers sitting in that department, is the disability champion for DEFRA as a department. And what Mims Davies does as the minister, the disability minister, is we meet with all of the disability champion ministers on a regular basis, and Mims chairs it, and we try to understand from a policy perspective what each department's needs and focuses need to be on to ensure that we are addressing through our own policy within our own departments how we can best help those with special educational needs or disability challenges and requirements. And Mims Davies has been very proactive since taking on the role, and I think that we are delivering as a government as best as we can under her as the disability minister.
Well, it was saying here that there was, I think, was it a week they said there was no disability minister? December.
So there was a change of minister. So the previous disability minister was moved into the Home Office and their role changed. And on their role changing, Mims Davies was appointed as the disability minister. So there's been a change of individual that is responsible for that portfolio area. But that definitely does not mean that there's been a change of focus or a change of priority, just a change of the individual that is in charge of that policy area. So under Mims Davies, she has been exceptionally proactive in being a champion in her ministerial role as being the disability minister, but also has been very proactive in interacting with all government departments, including the department that I'm lucky enough to be in as DEFRA, the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Department, as the disability champion for that. And we get together very regularly and have a roundtable discussion, not only as ministers, but also with our policy advisors within our own department areas. So and the idea of doing that is that at every possible part of government, of the machinery of government, policy is scrutinised and cross-checked to make sure that it is working for those with disabilities.
Yeah.
How and where, as the government changes the disabilities minister role?
Yeah, okay, Daniel. Well, I suppose it just comes back to what I've just been saying, in that we have a disabilities minister. That's Mims Davies, who, like me, is also a member of Parliament. She has her own constituency, like I am your MP here in Keighley. But her specific role in government is being the minister for disabilities, and so she leads on that policy area. But one of the great things that she also does is she interacts with a minister from every government department to make sure that every government department is cross-checking, focusing, scrutinising the policy that government department is developing and rolling out to make sure that it works for those with disabilities. And as I was saying, I, in the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, is the disability champion. And that's why I was really keen to come along and have a chat with you today. So I don't think the role has actually changed at all. It is just the individual that is responsible for that role has changed. But I can tell you that Mims Davies is absolutely focused 100% on making sure that we're delivering for all within the for all that have challenging circumstances and disabilities.
Yeah. How will this impact people with disabilities?
So I suppose it just comes back to, I don't feel that the role has actually changed. So I just want to reiterate that we've got a disabilities minister who is responsible for making sure that every government department is focusing on their making sure that their policies are focused towards those with disabilities and that we're delivering for those with disabilities. So there hasn't really been a change back to all three questions, really. So I hope that I'm just reassuring everybody that we've got an exceptional disabilities minister who is absolutely prioritising delivering policy that works, but also cross-checking with other MPs, like myself, in a ministerial capacity, but also as a constituency MP representing a community and making sure that policy works for them.
So what does it mean about the demoted disability minister post?
So this comes back to the point of the individual who had previously held the post. So the individual, Tom Pursglove, was a Minister of State. And Mims Davies, who is now the Disabilities Minister, has the title of Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State. Now, the role which they are doing has not changed at all. The types of policy that they're wanting to bring out has not changed at all. Their interaction that they have with colleagues in terms of making sure that policy works within the different government departments, but also for their individual constituencies and individual communities, that making sure it's completely focused on those with challenges or special educational needs or disabilities has not changed. So there has been no downgrading of the roles and responsibilities associated with the disabilities minister. The only change that has happened has been the individual who is in charge of that policy area. It's changed from Tom to Mims, both of which two individuals have been exceptional in that post. And Mims Davies, as I say, has been doing a really good job in that role as I see it, and continues to make sure that she's prioritising disability needs.
Yeah.
How do you think that the changes to the Minister of Disabilities people will affect people locally?
So the change is, as I just sort of said through every question, is just been a change of the individual that is being responsible for this portfolio area. So that's the only change that's really taken place. The policy that is being developed, the interaction with colleagues and MPs and government departments has not changed. If anything, I think locally, you're sitting not only with your local MP, sat around the table with you all as your constituency MP, but you're also sat here with a minister sitting in the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs who has specifically got a role in government as being a disabilities champion, as a minister in that department, which actually gives me, as your MP, an even better position, because I have got a direct line into developing policy that works for and enhances the needs requirements of those with disabilities. So for you on the ground, I think we're probably in a better position, because that's why I'm wanting to keeping the levels of engagement with you going, and the amounts of events, and you being able to scrutinise me and what I'm doing. But I've now sitting in government as a community champion for those with disabilities. Having direct communication with the Disabilities Minister puts me in an even better position to be able to do that, rather than just being a constituency MP.
What are your thoughts about people who are being told to work from home or face their disability funding being cut?
So I think everybody should have the opportunity to work from wherever they want to work from, or for whichever environment, workplace environment that they want to work from, and it shouldn't be the system stopping them from doing that. And I don't believe actually that the system is doing that, Luke. Let me just refer to what the government is doing. We've on the back of coming out of the pandemic, we were incredibly conscious that was a challenging period.
Oh, it was, and it taught everybody something. Oh, well, not just one thing, but many things. I don't want to interrupt you there, but I must say I agree it was challenging.
Well, and I agree, Luke. It was a really difficult time for many people, and particularly I think for those with disabilities, which is why when we got out of the pandemic, we wanted to launch our back to work plan, which was an allocated figure nationally of £2.5 billion to try and help 600,000 people with disabilities be able to get, or all those with health conditions associated with their disabilities, be able to get back into work. And I think that was one of the things that we wanted to make sure we were focusing on, that we, as a government, were making sure that everybody, no matter of their personal circumstances or challenges, had the ability to get back into the workplace, whether that was physically at work or at home if they chose to be at home to do that. And just to build on that, I think one of the other things that we're incredibly conscious of is the health and well-being challenges associated with, if you've got a disability, it might be even more difficult on your own health and well-being. So through things like NHS talking therapies, we're supporting an extra 384,000 people with mental health support over the next 5 years, to be able to try and get those individuals installed with more confidence, but also being able to help those individuals get back into their work environment as quickly as they're able to do so. So I probably just want to reassure everyone around the table that as a government, we recognise those challenges, which is why we're putting a concerted effort into trying to make it as easy as possible for anyone with disabilities to work in whichever work environment that they choose to do so.
When I briefly saw the thing about disabled people working from home, I just thought, hang on, government's going back to the old days instead of moving forward. You know, sort of like going back to the old days of keeping disabled people at home instead of not wanting them to work. But you've cleared it up a bit, really.
Yeah, I suppose, Tom, I just want to reassure you and everybody that's listening that there is a concerted effort by the government actually to make sure that whatever work environment you or anyone with disabilities want to work in, whether that is in office space or in the workplace or indeed from home on Zoom, that the same opportunities and the same abilities to do that applies to everybody, which is why the Back to Work plan that I was referring to earlier on is so important, but also through universal support that we're rolling out, trying to provide as much support to individuals that have got specific challenges or disabilities, which allows a funding package of around £4,000 per individual, per participant that's applying for that help and that support, to be able to be provided so that we can ensure that as many people get back into the workplace as are supported as best as they can.
What are your thoughts about the government's response to the cost of living crisis and how that has affected people with disabilities?
So again, the cost of living challenge exists because of many different circumstances. So not only coming out of a very difficult and challenging period with the pandemic, but also with the pressures that have been put on from a global perspective with the likes of the war in Ukraine, which has had a challenge with many people's utility bills, whether it's their gas or electricity bill. And also there's been global inflationary pressures that has obviously impacted people's utility bills. So all of that combined together creates a pretty challenging circumstance. So the government has, across the board, rolled out subsidy mechanisms to people's utility bills, so their electricity and gas bills, through the energy price guarantee, which was a subsidy payment that was a support payment that was given out to households to be able to reduce the cost of their bills, but also through universal credit support that was rolled out, and also specifically through the Back to Work plan and the £4,000 per individual for those that have got disability needs that need that extra bit of support in terms of getting back into the workplace, has tried to be a package of measures collectively that the government has been focused on to help all households with the challenges associated with the cost of living, but also some specific measures in there to help those that have got disability needs.
Why is it that it's still going on? I mean, why is it that... I mean, when will the war end?
Well, it's very difficult to know that, particularly with the reference to the war in Ukraine. But so I think the question is, how can this government, the UK government, roll out as much support as possible to those that absolutely need it? And that's why, Luke, through the energy price guarantee that I was referring to, which is helping people with their utility bills, the Back to Work plan, which is a £2.5 billion a contribution to try and get around 600,000 people with disabilities back into the workplace. So it's a combination of measures that we're trying to roll out as a government to help as many people with disability needs as possible to try and support. Because, as you quite rightly point out, what we don't have control over is some of those global pressures, whether it's inflationary pressures or the likes of not only the war in Ukraine, but the war that's happening in Gaza with Israel and in the Middle East. And they all have challenging inflationary pressures that are put onto household bills and costs.
That's all we have time of to today. On the show, we like to say a big thank you again to MP Moore coming on the show. Even though we know how busy you are, we able to provide some good information to our listeners. Do you have anything to add before we sign off a bit more?
Well, can I just add how grateful I am for you to invite me along and for me to answer your questions, because I know that I come and see you all quite regularly, because my office is literally just across the way, so I try and come and see people first, Keighley and Craven, as much as I can. I've enjoyed my interaction over the last few years, whether it's been going to our conferences that we've had over in Skipton. I've enjoyed those, as well as coming along to do Q&A with you. And I look forward to continuing having that relationship with you all, because I enjoy it, and I hope that you get out of it as much as what I get out of it.
You've been to the big thanks as well.
I have. And that was a good event as well, wasn't it? And the mince pie event that we had as well, that was good. So please keep asking me to come along, because I enjoy it, and I hope you get out of it as much as I do. So thank you.
I'm really glad you joined the podcast today.
I've very much enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
I just want to say, Robbie, it's the first time I've ever met you, and you've been an honour. It's been an honour to have met you, and it's not over yet. We're going to do a Q&A.
I know. Do you know what? And I'm looking forward to that. This is just the warm-up, I think, isn't it?
Robbie Moore question time.
I know.
Remember to comment, like, and share on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find us by searching for People First Podcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.